Have you ever sat beside someone at work, shared small talk over tea, laughed at their jokes, and trusted them, only to realize much later that something about them was never right? Offices are supposed to feel predictable, almost dull. Endless emails, the soft clicking of keyboards, the distant sound of a printer refusing to cooperate. But sometimes, under the calm surface of routine, something darker is breathing quietly. A glance that lasts too long. A smile that feels pasted on. A presence that makes your skin tighten even before your mind understands why. Tonight, you're about to step inside 3 very disturbing true coworker horror stories that will make you question who is really sitting beside you, who is watching you when you're not looking, and who knows far more about your life than they ever should. But buried inside every moment of fear is also a powerful lesson, a spark of awareness and strength that turns terror into wisdom, and darkness into survival, because fear does not always come to destroy you. Sometimes, it comes as a warning meant to save you. In the first story, there was a young woman named Sarah who had just landed what she thought was her dream job. The building was tall, glass covering its sides like a mirror to the world outside, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it looked like heaven had stopped there for a moment. The reception smelled of disinfectant and flowers, and the floors shone as if they had never known dirt. Everything about the workplace whispered safe and professional. Her desk was placed near the windows, the sunlight warming her hands as she typed, and for the first few days she felt grateful, content, almost peaceful. Then she met Daniel. Daniel worked 2 desks away from her. He had neat hair, a gentle voice, and that friendly smile that managers love. He was the type of coworker everyone praised. The first day, he offered to help her with the office system, leaned in just a little too close as he pointed at her screen, and laughed softly when she said thank you. It was nothing anyone would question. But inside her chest, something twisted. It was not fear in the loud, obvious way. It was subtle, like the touch of cold air slipping through a small, ignored crack in the wall. She convinced herself it was first-day anxiety. She told herself she was over. Days turned into weeks, and the feeling never left. Sometimes, when she looked up from her work, she found him staring at her, not in the casual way people look around a room, but with focus, intensity. When their eyes met, he would smile and look away. Her coworkers never noticed. They were too busy gossiping, typing, living their ordinary lives. She started to notice tiny things. Her pen placed slightly differently than she had left it. Her chair pushed in when she was sure she had left it out. A faint smell of another person's cologne on her scarf that she had hung on her chair. One afternoon, she returned from lunch and found a printed photograph on her desk. It showed her walking through the empty parking lot the night before, the image slightly blurred, taken from a distance. Panic curled in her stomach. When she asked around, Daniel laughed. "Relax, it's just a joke. You looked kind of cinematic walking alone like that," he said. The others brushed it off. "He's harmless," they insisted. "You're just being sensitive." But her intuition was screaming quietly inside the cage of her ribs. It told her that politeness could be a mask, that kindness could be a costume, that the world didn't always warn you loudly when danger was nearby. For several nights, she barely slept. Her mind kept replaying the image, the angle, the loneliness of that moment, the knowledge that while she thought she was alone, she never truly was. So, one evening, long after the rest of the staff had gone home, Sarah hid her phone behind a stack of files and turned on the camera before stepping away to the restroom. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The office was silent, almost sacred in its emptiness. On the recording, which she watched later with trembling hands, Daniel appeared at her desk. He scanned the room like an animal, making sure no one could see him. Then he opened her drawers. He touched her belongings, slowly, deliberately, as though they meant something far deeper to him than mere objects. He lifted her scarf to his face and inhaled, his eyes closing as he whispered her name into the quiet air, a sound that made her blood turn to ice. That night, the reality of the situation crashed over her. She wasn't imagining the danger. She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't paranoid. She was being warned. The next day she went to her manager and the security team. Her voice shook, but she did not stop speaking. They checked his computer and found hundreds of pictures of her taken without permission. Screenshots of her social media, notes that tracked her routine down to the minute. He had built a fantasy world around her, one she had never agreed to participate in, and one that could have turned even darker if she had ignored her inner voice. Sarah didn't survive because she fought. She survived because she listened. She listened to a voice inside her that society often tells people to ignore. A voice that says, something is wrong. That inner knowing is not weakness. It is divine protection. Most horror stories begin when someone decides to silence it for the sake of being polite, or not wanting to offend, or simply because they don't want to look foolish. Sarah chose to believe herself instead. And her story teaches a truth that echoes through all the dark corners of life. Intuition is your strongest shield. In another office, miles away, there was a man named Victor who worked in a crowded, fast-paced environment where everyone was expected to be friendly, close, like a second family. But his coworker Mark had no sense of personal space. At first, it seemed like awkwardness. He'd stand too close during conversations, leaning in as if to share a secret when there was none. He would crack inappropriate jokes that made Victor uncomfortable and slap his shoulder a little too hard, a little too often. Everyone told him, that's just how Mark is. So Victor laughed along, even though he hated the way his stomach tightened every time the man came near. One evening, Mark followed him into the stairwell and placed a hand on his neck, whispering something that made no sense but felt like a threat. That was the moment Victor realized discomfort is not something to tolerate. The very next day, he reported it and demanded clear distance. Security stepped in. Mark was warned, then monitored. A week later, cameras caught Mark in the parking area, hiding a weapon in his bag while waiting for Victor to leave. Those boundaries didn't just save his comfort, they protected his life. Boundaries are not rude. They are sacred lines that protect the body and the soul. Then there was the intern named Layla, fresh out of college, shy, eager to impress. Her supervisors seemed strict but normal until she caught him one night logging into other employees' accounts. She watched him read private emails, copy information, and whisper angry words under his breath, as if the computer screen had personally offended him. Fear glued her to her seat. She told herself it was none of her business. Weeks passed, and she saw him do it again and again. Silence felt safer than speaking, but silence does not equal protection. When she finally gathered the courage to report him, an entire web of blackmail, manipulation, and threats was revealed. Dozens of people were being controlled through their own secrets. Her voice, once trembling, became the key that set many people free. Speaking up is terrifying, but sometimes your words are the only light in a room full of darkness. In another disturbing tale, a coworker named James was the most cheerful person in the office. Motivational posters lined his wall. He brought donuts every Friday. He remembered birthdays and anniversaries. Everyone called him the good one. But numbers don't lie the way faces do. Projects he touched mysteriously failed. Important files disappeared. Deadlines were missed only by those he secretly Security cameras eventually caught him entering the office late at night, deleting work, rearranging data, and slowly sabotaging others while keeping his own image perfectly clean. Evil does not always wear a frightening face. Sometimes, it smiles warmly, compliments your outfit, and asks how your family is doing, all while quietly destroying your life behind the scenes. Words can be beautiful lies. Actions are the truth. Another woman, Maria, felt an unexplainable dread every time she walked past a particular coworker. He never spoke, never smiled, never did anything openly wrong. Still, something about him made the air feel heavier. One day, she asked for a shift change without giving a reason. Her manager agreed. 2 weeks later, That same coworker was arrested for crimes that took place precisely during the hours she used to work. What looked like a small, almost meaningless decision rewrote her fate. Courage isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, it is as simple and silent as asking for a different schedule. Then there was the young man locked inside a storeroom by colleagues who claimed it was just a prank. The lights were off. The door wouldn't open. His voice echoed inside the darkness as he banged on the metal, screaming for help. Minutes stretched into an eternity. In that moment he felt his mind slipping into fear, into helplessness, into the thought that he might never leave that room alive. But when the door finally opened, something inside him had changed forever. He left that job and dedicated his life to helping others who suffered at the hands of workplace cruelty. The darkness that tried to break him instead carved a purpose inside his heart. In another quiet hallway late at night, a janitor named Rose avoided a certain coworker who made her uncomfortable. He would linger around where she cleaned, pretending to help, his eyes filled with something unreadable. One night, she chose to finish a different floor instead of her usual one, simply because her instincts said, "Not tonight." That same night, another employee was attacked in the area she would have been working. Her fear was not weakness, it was awareness. It was protection. Survival itself is a form of power, even when it feels like timidity to the outside world. And even for those who were hurt, those who were manipulated, stalked, locked in fear, healing still came. Scars do not mean the story is over. Every person who walked through that terror learned to rebuild trust, to reclaim their space, to breathe without looking over their shoulder. They learned that no matter how deep the darkness cuts, it cannot erase the light that lives inside a determined soul. If there is one truth that runs through these very disturbing coworker horror stories, it is this: your life is precious beyond measure. Your awareness is a gift. Your intuition is sacred. Protect your heart without apology. Listen to the whispers that try to guide you away from danger, and never let fear convince you that you are powerless. May God surround you with protection in every office, every hallway, every elevator, every quiet workspace, and every lonely parking lot. May no evil intention, hidden obsession, or dangerous coworker come near your path. May angels stand at your side unseen, keeping watch when you cannot. And when shadows creep close, may a powerful light rise from within you, reminding you that you are stronger than the darkness, guided by heaven, protected by faith, and destined not just to survive, but to rise.